Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video. Today we're going to be doing a player ratings from the 3-0 defeat against Man City yesterday, as there's not really much point in a tactical breakdown. I think we all watched the game, but yeah, we're going to get into the individual performances, see who performed well and who was a little bit off the boil yesterday at the Etihad. So up first, we've got Fabianski in goal. Now, it was kind of difficult to judge this one. I've gone with a 5 just on the fact that he made a couple of decent saves, kept us in the game in the first half with a good save. They got lucky when they hit the post, but just again, in the second half, not really much that he offered. And for all of the goals, the third goal being a deflection, again, not much you can really do with that. But the first one kind of just fumbled into the net. And the second one, again, Haaland's just an exceptional finisher, so you can't really criticize him much. But maybe could have done a little bit better for the goal. But yeah, nothing really to shout about for Fabianski, just an average performance, which is why he gets the 5. Next up, we have Kufal in the right wing back position as we played a back 5 with a few of those injuries yesterday. And he's been someone that's been consistently in the team and has probably been one of the biggest reasons for our turnaround in results in the last month or so. And he was having, again, another really good game. He was kind of given the responsibility to follow Grealish and man mark Grealish out of the game. Every time he got the ball, he was stuck onto him. You even saw him a few times throughout the game drifting where Grealish went out of position. It was a clear instruction, and it's really, interesting battle every time they come up against each other. It happened when he was at Aston Villa as well. So I think he got the better of it, really. It was only a couple times where Grealish maybe made that 1 or 2 passes inside him, maybe got a couple of fouls, but in essence, in that first half particularly, Kufal really nullified him, and with a player we'll speak about in a bit with the help of him. But it's really a shame that he went off with that hamstring injury. Hopefully it's nothing too serious and it might have just been a tweak and we've taken him off as a precaution. So yeah, overall, I would give Kufal a 7, a really solid performance away at City, considering he's been, consistently playing for us. And yeah, as I mentioned, I think he dealt with Jack Grealish really well throughout the game. Now, up next is someone that you probably wouldn't expect to have got this high of a rating, myself included, but Thilo Kehrer was just outstanding, really outstanding. He made a couple of sloppy passes here and there when trying to play out from the back, but in all, it was really good performance from him. He made a couple of really last-ditch tackles to prevent goals. I remember one in the first half and the second half. Positionally, he was very good in that back 3. I've always said for Thilo Kehrer, he's not a right back. He's not that good in a back 4, but when you get him in a back 3, that's where you'll see the best of him, because he has a little bit more time on the ball to play out from the back, which we saw. And he's given less defensive burden because he's got someone like Ogbonna next to him who's, going to deal with most stuff that comes into the box, which we'll actually get onto in a bit. But yeah, Kehrer overall, really solid performance. I think that's probably his best performance in a West Ham shirt. I think he stood out from that defense other than Ogbonna from the first half. And, he made really crucial interceptions. And, they were trying to get a penalty in the second half, but it was absolutely brilliant last-ditch sliding tackle. And yeah, that's why I've given him an 8, man. I think he was really good. And I feel like with the Zuma injury, we're probably going to continue with a back 3, especially going into the United game. So it's good that it's good that he's got that position to come into, and we could bring him in, and hopefully again will be back for that Man United game. So it will look a little bit more solid either side and a bit more balanced. But yeah, Kehrer, really good yesterday. So giving him an 8. Now moving on to Ogbonna, again, the middle of that back 3, and he was definitely on track to win this man on the match reward from yesterday's game. And, that first half, he was like a magnet. I think they said it on commentary. He was heading absolutely everything away from that box. Everything they tried to cross in, he was there. Really solid defensive display. Everything you'd expect from someone like Ogbonna in that type of game and that type of situation. What let him down was the second half. Now, obviously, he didn't lose the free kick in the first place, but you can see at the back post there was like 3 Man City players. Again, this is just down to communication. Ogbonna is in a pretty decent position to head it out if it comes to him, or just stay in that line, which Cresswell was, pointing to straight after. He makes the decision to drop back in, which is totally a valid thing to do in that situation, because he, backs himself in those aerial duels. What he does is he makes a little dart forwards and just leaves that back post free for Ake. And it was his fault in the end for that goal. And he shouldn't have done that. So if you're going to go in, you have to make sure you win that ball and you don't get attracted to the player in front of you. That's not what he did. And then again, for the second goal, they kind of hit us on the break. So Ogbonna could have stepped up. He would have made Haaland offside. Kehrer was kind of backtracking as well. But I think if Ogbonna had recognised that and just played in level with Kehrer, Haaland would have actually been offside. So again, a small mistake from him that's potentially cost us that second goal. But yeah, he was on track for a really good performance. But yeah, the second half, a couple of mistakes let him down. So it's dropped him down to a 6 overall. And yeah, I don't think there will be too many complaints with that one. Then we move on to the left side of the back three, which was Cresswell. We've seen him play them numerous times. It's probably his better position now. He's getting older and he doesn't have that, responsibility of being the sole left back. He did okay. There wasn't really much to say about him. No glaring mistakes, no real issues, to be honest. Just a solid performance. A couple of times where he played it down the channel to Antonio to run onto. But other than that, really just wasn't much to say about him. So yeah, just another 6 for Cresswell. Now moving on to complete the defensive line was Emerson at left wing back. It's just such a mix. I get mixed emotions from watching Emerson because there's moments in the match where he'll link up with Paqueta really well, and he'll be a pretty good threat in the middle transition of the pitch, which is that middle block that we often see us kind of try and work through. And Man City, to their credit, stopped us from doing that really, especially in the second half. But he was kind of at the forefront of everything we were doing well in the first and second half. Throughout the bits and periods we did have, he was linking well with Paqueta. And he was offering a little bit of an outlet down that left-hand side because we were lacking pace on that side. But overall, the one thing that is kind of an issue with him is he doesn't tend to have that defensive instinct to switch on and get back into position and that work ethic that we see under a David Moyes team. Compare him with Kufal, for example. He can be lazy. He can tend to kind of drift through a match in periods where, he'll press out and then he'll just kind of jog back into position. It will leave those gaps free. And, even for the third goal where it deflects off him or from the Foden shot, it's kind of a laboured jog out and he turns his back. And you should be doing better as a defender. You should be putting yourself on the line to do everything to stop that shot. And it was a half-hearted attempt. So, yeah, again, for that reason, drops him down to a 6. If he didn't make those kind of mistakes and looked a bit more, switched on defensively, this probably would have been a 7 or 8 because on the ball and in that middle transition, he was very good at left wing back. So yeah, 6 for Emerson overall. Now moving on to the midfield, obviously no Declan Rice this time round or Thomas Souček. So we played a midfield pivot of Downs and Paquetá. And yeah, let's start with Downs. To be honest, really solid performance, in my opinion. I think people were maybe being a little bit critical of him on Twitter, to be honest, considering he hasn't played many minutes at all. He's gone in the deep end at City away, playing with Paquetá. And yeah, I think especially in the first half, what he did really well was help Kufal out on that right-hand side. You see Bernardo Silva drifting over there to try and find those spaces. Well, actually, Downs nullified that really well, and he kind of absorbed that space. And when Grealish was coming inside, Downs was there. He was helping Kufal out really well. So that, in that essence, he worked really well. It took him a little bit to get into the game, but I thought the second half especially started getting on the ball a bit more, started playing it around. One thing I'd like to see a bit more from him is that ambition to maybe play a little bit more forward. We saw it with Rice early on in his West Ham career. He was very much playing the safer passes, but now we've started to see him, I don't know how to describe it, but he's started to add stuff to his repertoire, and Downs hasn't got that yet. He's more of the holding 6 that will play it safe. I think he had like 92% pass completion from 22 passes. That's the type of player he is. And I think he was unfortunate for the free kick to give that foul away on Grealish. Grealish is really good at winning those kind of free kicks. Downs thought he could get there to try and stop the break. Didn't work out. But yeah, that was kind of the only mistake he made, really, other than a couple of, positional errors. But that will come with time, and playing in a midfield 2 away at City is never easy. So for that reason, I'm going to give him a 7. Like I mentioned, probably lacking a lot of match fitness and sharpness. So yeah, I think he done really well considering the circumstances. Moving on to Paquetá. It's so obvious that he was the best player for us on the pitch in terms of his ability. He's starting to stand out in that team, and that's what we signed him for. We wanted him to stand out, but probably not to this extent in the situation we're in. But yeah, yesterday again, such a good performance from him. Really good on the ball, considering the amount of the lack of possession we did have. everything that we were trying to build through was coming through him in the middle, especially in the second half, that we didn't really create a lot, but when we were kind of retaining the ball, trying to look for pockets, it was him that was trying to do that, definitely. So I think from that aspect, he was really, really good. Defensively, again, as well, worked his socks off, considering he's probably knackered as well. Couple of things to kind of note is just those loose passes when he has a little bit more time on the ball. I think no one has really an issue with Paquetá when he tries to play those ambitious passes in the final third or in dangerous, positions of the pitch. But when he makes those silly mistakes in the middle third and it catches us out, it happened a couple of times in the first half and City almost scored on the break. That's what he needs to cut out of his game, because it happens probably once or twice a game at the moment. And that's a worry to be doing that. If you're playing the ambitious passes, fair enough, but it's those kind of sideways passes, sloppy passes in the middle of the pitch, which could end up costing us. We got away with it yesterday at City, and there's been instances before where we got away with it as well. So other than that, he was exceptional again, and yeah, I'd give him an 8 out of 10. The same as Kehrer. I thought them two yesterday were kind of the standouts before we get into the attack. But yeah, 8 for Paquetá, and let's move on to that front three. So we kind of set up in a 5-2-1-2, similar to how we've done in Europe this season. We had Antonio kind of coming on the left, Bowen on the right, and Fornals playing in the middle as kind of the false 9 or dropping in as an 8. And Antonio was kind of left a little bit more higher up on the left, and Bowen was trying to track back more. But let's start with Bowen on the right-hand side. Again, it wasn't much to write home about, and it was probably expected in the circumstances of the game. I think he done pretty well in the first half. A lot of the stuff that we did do well came down that right-hand side with him, and he was so close to breaking the deadlock. A quick throw from Kufal, Bowen getting in behind. We've seen that so many times throughout the past couple of years. A really nice touch. And then all he had to do was just pass it back to Fornals on the edge. I think he was in acres of space in the middle of the box, but he tries to kind of catch out the goalie, and you can see he uses his right foot to try and score. In that situation, you just have to pass it across the box, no matter what happens, because something could happen from it. And Fornals was there in space. So again, he got the chance by himself through really good technical ability on the ball, but just that final pass let him down. And then second half kind of drifted out of the game, as did most of our attacking players. And yeah, he just looked fatigued. He's played so many minutes for us. He needs a proper rest. And, he's very much been the one that's been dependent on our attacking ability and also trying to work hard defensively. So yeah, again, kind of average. We'll give him a 6 out of 10 just because he did some bits good. But yeah, drifted out of the game in the second half, and probably down to fatigue and just how we were set up with the personnel. But yeah, let's move on to the next attacker. So as mentioned, playing in the kind of middle of the 5-2-1-2 was Fornals. It's been such a frustrating season for him. Again, a player that's clearly lacking match sharpness, match fitness, but he was pretty disappointing yesterday, I'll be honest. He had a couple of shots. One went row Z. One he tried to score from like the halfway line that just dribbled along the floor. He did a couple of okay things, but in general, nothing really. He worked hard, I will say that. He did put in the miles. You could see it in his interview as well. He said they went there to kind of be like dogs and work really hard, which is true. We did put in a real shift yesterday, considering how tired we were. Looked against Palace, but you need to also show the other side of it. And whenever he did kind of get the ball, he let us down. And as I mentioned, those couple of shots as well just didn't really impact the game how we'd want him to impact the game from that position. So yeah, it's the lowest rating so far, giving him a 4. I think he was clearly the worst player yesterday for us, which is a shame, but it's good that he got some minutes under his belt, and hopefully that will get him up to a little bit more sharpness with games coming up if he's needed, and he might get some games in Europe and stuff. So yeah, definitely the worst player for us yesterday, other than the substitution, which we're not going to talk about. But yeah, let's move on to the final rating, which is Antonio. So again, for me, this was a really good performance from Antonio. Early on, won the battle with Diaz. Should have got a yellow card early on as well. Diaz, that is. And he was just stretching the Man City defence, trying to get us up the pitch, and he was carrying the ball pretty well. A couple of times his decision-making was a little bit poor, where he could have played a pass a little earlier and maybe taken the extra touch. But in essence, he was drifting out to the left-hand side. He was working really hard defensively as well to try and block off those passing lanes. And you could see how he was set up in that kind of 5-2-1-2, which almost became like a a 5-3-2 or 5-4-1 even, with Fornals as the centre. And Antonio and Byrne were working really hard to kind of keep it narrow and compact, and then trying to exploit the spaces, which was really difficult because he was up there by himself and he was trying to take on 2 or 3 players at a time. But he did have some success in that first half. Second half, again, he was the one that was trying. He was the one drifting out to those spaces, getting in behind, carrying the ball. He just didn't have the support. Again, it's just the way we were set up, and it's the way Moyes likes to play. Antonio will be able to do that for you, but there's only a certain amount you can actually do, especially away at Man City. So for that reason, I'd give him a 7. He was obviously taken off early. You can see he was frustrated to be taken off because he was having a good game, but we need him for the Man United game. We need to rest his legs. So obviously Ings came on and dropped an absolute disaster class. But we're not going to talk about the substitution performances because it was really Ings that was the main one. And obviously Ben Johnson coming on for Kufau again, nothing really to write home about. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of these player ratings. Do you agree? Anything you think I've got glaringly wrong? Let us know in the comments. Overall, was expected. It was nice to be 0-0 at half time, and it's just frustrating that a set piece broke the deadlock and not sort of like a nice pattern of play from Man City. We kind of just gave them that first goal, and then it was a really difficult game from then on because we're trying to chase the game but also keep it tight. And yeah, we got hit on the break for the second, and the third was just a deflection late on. So overall, I think we can take the positives from the match. Obviously, Paqueta and Kehrer both got an 8 for me, so picking a man of the match is going to be difficult, but I'm actually going to give it to Kehrer. I think Paqueta stood out more in terms of what he was doing, but when you kind of look back at that Kehrer performance, he made 2 really last-ditch brilliant tackles that prevented goals, and again, building out from the back, he was a lot more comfortable in possession, and it's nice to see a player like that, especially in the situation being Man City away. So yeah, I think Kehrer definitely deserves that man of the match. There's obviously an argument for Paqueta as well, and I wouldn't be surprised if people did give it to him. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a like on the video. And until next time, come on, you Irons.